Hey, good evening, and have a early happy Halloween, a spooky evening from the Riverwood Conservancy. And thank you so much for joining us tonight for our spooktacular Facebook Live event, Creepy Crawlies and Nighttime Nature. Hope that you're having a wonderful evening. Hope that you're looking forward to Halloween in a couple of days, even though it's going to be very different from what we normally do around here. And above all, hope you're staying safe and healthy. My name is Rashid Clark. I'm the marketing specialist at the Riverwood Conservancy. Thanks so much for joining us today. And just a reminder before we get going, we do very much appreciate donations to keep programs like this going, as well as programs at Riverwood as we are getting back into the park, continuing with our conservation efforts. So if you have the financial ability, we'd very much appreciate the donation at theriverwoodconservancy.org. As we get to today's presentation on creepy crawlies and nighttime nature, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please drop them into the comment section. And just as a little bit of a preview, not a spoiler alert, I don't think, we'll be playing some scary sounds from nature over the course of the presentation, and we'll be asking you to guess what those sounds are. So stay close to your keyboard and type in your guesses into the comments, as well as any questions you may have for our presenter, Stephanie Keeler, who has taught our Education Naturally programs and is currently our Community Program Coordinator. So Stephanie, I will turn things over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashid, and good evening, everyone. We are going to be talking about the spooky creatures that live at Riverwood. Hopefully everybody is staying safe and well during these times. We are definitely in very different times, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of a Halloween experience as much as we can at this point. So today we're going to be talking about the creepy crawlies and nighttime nature that we have at the Riverwood Conservancy. So let's jump right in. Before we actually get into the program, I just want to acknowledge that the land we are on and which we operate is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, and Haudenosaunee nations. So it's really important that we recognize these territories during these times, because I am so grateful that we have this land to use recreationally, but also to work on as well. So thank you for that. Now, we are going to start from the very beginning, the reptiles and amphibians, and they're probably the scariest creatures or the most disliked creatures that we have at Riverwood. So we're going to be talking about the reptiles and amphibians that have Halloween ties. To begin, probably, I won't say hated, but the animal that scares the most people worldwide is snakes. Snakes are very scary for a lot of people. People think they're slimy or scaly. This is not true. They're quite smooth and kind of nice to touch when you do pick up one. There's so many stories about snakes trying to aggressively attack you and all of this, these myths around them, especially here within Ontario and Canada. Now, in Ontario, we have over 15 species of snakes, and all of them, but one, are non-venomous. So they cannot hurt you. If you pick them up and they bite you, they will not hurt you. There's one species of snake that you do need to watch out for in Ontario, and that's called the Massasauga rattlesnake. And that lives up near Georgian Bay. It does not occur in Mississauga. A lot of people mistake the name Massasauga rattlesnake as Mississauga rattlesnake. So many people that come to Riverwood say, are there any Mississauga rattlesnakes here? And I say, no, there's nothing venomous in Riverwood at all. Even the Massasauga rattlesnake, if you do ever seem to see one, maybe up at your cottage or around Georgian Bay, they really don't want to hurt you. They don't want to come out underneath the rock that they're hiding under. They just want you to go away. So they'll warn you with that rattling tail. They'll say, get out of here. I don't want to hurt you, but I don't want to deal with you as well. And that's like a lot of our snake species in Ontario and around the world. They're not aggressive animals. They're more so defensive animals. They're defending themselves. They're scared of us. So it's really important to distinguish the difference between aggression and defensive, because these species are just trying to survive and they don't want to hurt us. They don't even want to interact with us. So the first snake that we have here, this is the garter snake, and this is the most common snake that we have in Canada. It's all over the place. Often it's referred to as the garden snake because you find them in your garden, but it is garter, like the things that gentlemen used to hold up their socks. And they have a bunch of different variations in color. This is probably the most common coloration, but they do have a reddish color sometimes. Sometimes they're completely brown. But you can tell them apart from different snakes because their tongue, which they use for smelling, has two different colors. The tips are black and the rest of it's kind of a pinky red as well. This is probably the most common snake I actually see at Riverwood. It's a very common sight, and this is the DKs Brown Snake. This snake is a juvenile here, but they do not get much bigger than this at all. They probably grow about this big. When they're adults, they're very tiny snakes and they're very harmless. If you pick them up, they usually don't even try to bite. They don't even try to musk on you. They're very friendly and docile snakes. Now, these snakes are found commonly under logs and rocks and things like that. So they use their tongue quite a lot to find their prey animals. And what are they eating? Slugs, snails, beetles, things that we don't necessarily want in our gardens. So snakes are really good as garden animals because they get rid of all those pest creatures that are within our gardens. So they don't use their sight so much as their smell when they're underneath logs and stuff like that because it's quite dark under there. Another snake that isn't common but does occur at Riverwood is the milk snake. It is a beautiful, beautiful snake. There are many spooky stories about the milk snake. One in particular, and why it got its name, milk snake, is these snakes used to be found in barns. So farmers used to tell these stories that late at night, when the moon came up, these milk snakes would slither into barns. And what they would do is they would drink all the milk from the cows and they would suck the life out of them. They'd drink all the milk so there was no milk left for the village. And so farmers were killing these snakes because they thought that they were getting rid of their cattle. They were drinking all the milk that they needed. And in reality, these snakes were just going to barns because they were things like rats and mice and small mammals that the farmers don't necessarily want in their barns. And the milk snake would go in there just to eat all of the little vermin that were around the barn. So it's kind of funny because farmers didn't want those mice and rats and things like that around their cattle, but they didn't realize that the snakes were in there eating them. And the last and probably most feared snake in Ontario, in my opinion, is the northern water snake. It does occur at Riverwood. I haven't seen one myself, but I do know that they hang around the shorelines of the Credit River. Now, the water snake spends most of its life in the water, hence its name, and it also spends a lot of its life on the shorelines too. They're eating more frogs and toads. They eat fish sometimes, so a lot of aquatic kind of species. Now, this snake in particular is a little more defensive than the other snakes, I will say. If you do pick it up, it often does want to bite you. It doesn't want to be picked up. It wants to be let down. Once again, these are not venomous snakes. They aren't dangerous at all to you. If they do bite you, you rarely even notice it really. But I will say, if you don't want to get bit by a snake, definitely do not pick up this one. Now that is a common sound that you'll hear in March when spring starts to come, it starts to warm up, the water starts to warm up. This is the American toad, and the American toad are very, very loud. That high-pitched trill you often hear first thing in the evening. As soon as the sun goes down, these toads get right into action. They're singing very loudly, and they almost go into sort of trance when they're doing this. You can walk directly up to these toads while they're singing, and they're all puffed up, and you can basically touch them. They're in a very deep trance. They're trying to find a mate, and they have one goal set in mind. Now, American toads often have some bad reputation, and they're associated with Halloween because of witches. So there's many, many stories of witches using toads to make spells or to cast spells on people. Some people even believe that witches would turn into toads and they would spy on you at night. A common story that was told is that these toads would come to your front doorstep and they would be witches that were in the form of toads, and they'd be watching your family at your doorstep. And there was one story where a gentleman killed all the toads that were on his doorstep because he thought they were all witches, and he was ill, sick for years and years and years after doing that, after killing all of these toads. Now, we know that's only a wise tale. These toads were likely on your front doorstep because you normally have a light out front of your door, and what is attracted to lights more so than insects. So lots of insects will come to them, moths and different kinds of species of insects, and the toad will just come there during the nighttime just to feed on the different insects. So I'm pretty sure it wasn't a witch at his front doorstep. Now, a common misconception about toads as well is that they have warts, and if you touch a toad, you will also get warts. This is also a myth. So I've picked up many toads in my days, and I'm pretty sure I don't have any warts that I know of. So none of the warts on the toads can actually be transferred to you. You will not get warts. I will point out one thing though. Toads have these two kind of bigger warts right behind their eyes. It's kind of blurry in this image, but they're kind of elongated behind their eyes. And these are called parotoid glands. Basically, there's two glands on the back of every toad, and this is a defense mechanism that they have. So if a snake was to bite onto that toad, the toad would release all of this white gooey stuff, and it's a toxin, and it tastes really, really horrible. So it's likely that the snake will spit out the toad, and the toad will be on its way. Another thing too, if you do pick up a toad, you'll notice sometimes they'll pee, but that's just merely because they're scared and they're trying to defend themselves, and they're saying, I'm really stinky, let me go. So toads are very harmless, and they're great creatures for the environment because they are prey to some of our other reptiles, amphibians like snakes, but as well they're predators to some of our pest species like mosquitoes and beetles and slugs and different things like that too. Now we're gonna move into bird species, and at some point I'm going to start playing some bird sounds, and I want, if you are here live, I want you to just comment down below what kind of bird species you think it is. There'll be tons of chances to guess a different species, and Rashid will let me know if anybody responds during this. Now, the first bird we're going to talk about is the common raven. It has a bad rap in many different stories and movies. You commonly see them in movies in around tombstones or, you know, Game of Thrones. They have the three-eyed raven. It's some sort of evil spirit sometimes. And there's a lot of bad connotation, but towards the raven. There's many stories of ravens following settlers and Indigenous people in the past, following them on their journeys across Canada. And they were thinking that these were either witches or wizards sending these ravens to follow them and to spy on them at the time. Another story is that ravens mean that there's something bad about to happen, or something bad that has already happened, but you do not know about it yet. So it's very common in different cultures. If you see a raven, that's bad luck. That means something bad is going to happen or has happened. Now,
there's something good, Stephanie, sorry if I could just interrupt, something good, a comment that we got from Brett that that raven will be my next tattoo. So a sign of good things, like not always associated with bad things or evil things, but Brett apparently is going to make some very nice art with that. So just thought I'd jump in and let you know about that. And Brett, thanks for the comment.
That's
good
awesome.
Luck with that tattoo.
Yes, and I'm definitely going to talk about why they're great. I don't think they're evil at all. I love ravens. They're a sign of intelligence for sure. Ravens are very, very intelligent creatures. They can recognize faces, and the reasons why these people, you know, they thought that they were following them because they were witches and wizards, but in reality these ravens knew that these people were on long journeys and that they'd bring food along with them. So it was common for the ravens to follow them because they knew they would leave food behind. So the ravens would follow them along the whole journey, and the whole time they would have all these snacks and foods left behind for them to eat. They're very intelligent creatures. And I have a kind of an anecdote too. I used to work at a rehabilitation center for different bird species, and we got one of these ravens in, and it was such an intelligent creature. It would, you know, move its head to side when I talked to it. Now, we had 3 of us staff members taking care of this raven, and we designated one person to do all of the kind of painful things that we'd need to, all in the good nature of the raven. So any kind of needle that it would need or wound care that it would need, one person would do that. And every time that person would go into the cage, the raven would recognize this person's face, and it would freak out. It would fly around the cage. It would yell. It would scream because it associated him with pain, you know, the needles or the wound care. Whereas me and my other colleague, we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. We only fed the creature so that it wasn't stressed out all the time. It knew our faces and knew we weren't going to hurt it. So they're very intelligent creatures for sure. And a great thing to tattoo on yourself too. That's pretty cool. Now, another bird that's associated with Halloween and kind of creepy nature is owls, of course. They are probably the king and queen of the nocturnal world in my mind. They are built for the nighttime. These little owls are also associated with witches, of course. Many people thought that owls were spying on people. It's the same story over and over again. But owls are built for nature in many different ways. Their body is very light. Their feathers are very light and fluffy, and they're basically silent when they fly. If you've ever heard a raven fly in the night, it's very loud. You can hear the wings flying, but when an owl flies, it's super, super, super quiet. So they're built for nighttime stalking and hunting of animals. As well, they have those huge eyes. The eyes are big so that they can bring in as much light as possible so that they can have nice night vision. Now, there's two kind of basic things that are in our eyes. There's rods and then there's cones. So rods are responsible for our light sensitivity, and cones are responsible for being able to see color. So owls have tons and tons and tons of rods in their eyes, way more than we have. So they can bring in tons of light into their eye and see really well at night. Whereas they don't have as many cones, so they don't have a really great eyesight for colors, so they see more in monochromatic. We have more cones in that case. So their eyes are built for the nighttime. As well, their eyes cannot move side to side like us, and that's actually why their head can turn so far. It's because they can only move their head to see what's to the left of them. And many people think that they can move their head all the way around 360, but this isn't the case. They can only move their head 270 degrees. One last thing that makes them so great for hunting in the nighttime, they have super long legs and really sharp talons. So when they do swoop down silently into the grasses or into snow, they have long legs that can reach down, grab that animal, and then fly back up right away. And they have that hooked beak to tear into any kind of little creature that's around us. Oh, before I go into this, this is when I'm going to start playing some sounds. Now, these ones are very difficult. The next two will be owls, specific species of owls. If you're great with birding, then maybe take a guess in the comments below, or just take a guess even if you're not great at birding as well. But I'm gonna play an owl sound, and you'll notice it's very creepy sounding for sure. So it sounds somewhat like someone laughing in my mind, but it also sounds like a horse sometimes.
Either way, it's terrifying, especially if you're walking around at night and that's all that you're going to hear. So yeah, I'll get people to just let's give it a minute here because we are getting a few comments in. So if you can guess, if you're really good with your owls, guess what kind of owl that is. And so we got one guess from Sheena of it being from Margaret, a saw-whet owl.
Okay.
We also got a guess of a screech owl from Sheena, and from Praveen, snowy owl. So we got 3 different owl guesses. Any of them correct?
Yes, the person that said screech owl was correct.
Screech owl. All right. And also, yes, from Joe, it sounds like a very small horse. So,
That was a baby horse for sure.
but yes, screech owl. So yes, great guesses. And yes,
So yeah,
good
those
job.
were awesome guesses. I'm glad that people are commenting on their guesses. So screech owls are commonly thought to be very loud and screeching in the night. It's more common to hear kind of that little hoarse trill instead. Now, a saw-whet owl, which was the first owl I showed in the at the beginning, that one kind of makes a doot, 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 doot sound when it's hooting, sorry. And it sounds quite similar to the screech owl. So I can see how that was kind of mixed up. So I will play another owl sound. This one's a lot more common. So let's see if we can get a correct answer again. Any guesses on this one, Rashid?
Let's see. We'll open it up again. So if anyone has especially the owl experts here, let's drop your guesses in here to see if you can identify that owl. A lot more. I don't know, I guess what you expect an owl to sound like, a little less terrifying than the first one. I'm gonna guess myself snowy owl.
Okay.
And let's see. Yeah, definitely less horse-like. And also from Sheena, barred owl is one more guess. And from Angelo, a horned owl.
And Angelo was correct.
All right, horned owl. Well done, Angelo.
Yeah, nice. It was a great horned owl. Now, barred owl was another really, really great guess. I like to remember the barred owl. It says, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?" Sorry, I'm just embarrassing myself here. But the great horned owl is a very common sound that you'll hear in like movies and TV shows when it's a spooky night. So great job. We're getting correct answers. That's awesome.
A lot of good answers, and I think a little bit of a lag between us playing the audio and the comments coming in. So maybe next time we'll give it a little bit more time for people to drop in their answers. But yeah, great guesses, and yeah, some owl experts here joining us tonight. So great job.
That's perfect. Thanks for letting me know, Rashid. Now, we have 6 kind of resident species that live at Riverwood. There's other species that move through Riverwood at some point, but they're more rare and they're not very common. Not to say that any of these owls are very common. They're still quite hard to find. But at the top left there, we have the barred owl, which was somebody commented as well. You can identify the barred owl easily by its deep brown eyes. Many owl species have kind of a greeny color to their eyes, but barred owls are one species that have a brown color. The middle top is our saw-whet owl. It's the smallest species of owl in Canada. It's very, very tiny, and it's the one that kind of goes doot, 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 when it's hooting. On the right top is our screech owl that we saw before. Below that is the great horned owl, like from the last sound. Beside the great horned owl is an owl that looks quite similar, and this is called the long-eared owl. And then beside that is the great gray owl. So at the bottom left is the great gray owl. And I would say this is probably the most sought after owl for photographers and birders alike. It's a humongous owl, and it's quite gorgeous to see as well. So great job, owl experts. That's awesome. So I'm going to be playing another song, and let's see if anybody can guess what this bird species is.
Okay, birders, show yourselves here and let us know what you think that one was. Okay, we got one guess from Robin saying a loon, which is my guess as well. Great minds hopefully think alike, Robin. And yeah, so and anyone else, if you can identify that bird call, we'll be very impressed. Drop your guesses or answers into the comments.
And I think I just gave it away, Rashid.
Okay. And now there's a loon on screen. So yeah, okay.
Not a loon. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's the common loon. Beautiful sounds, but also very eerie, almost creepy. Loons are lovely to see in the daytime, but when you hear them at night, and especially when you're camping and you're in a tent and you're kind of, you feel defensiveless, that's a kind of a scary sound to hear. And many people mistake it with a wolf howling. It does sound quite like a wolf would be howling as well. So it's eerie sounds that you hear at night, kind of in the forest around a lake. Now, loons are incredible creatures. They are built for the water. They are very awkward on land. If you've ever seen a loon walk, it is very weird. And they do have to walk on land when they lay eggs and they make a nest, but they don't go too far from the water because they cannot get back to that water very quickly. Their legs are located far, far back on the back of their bodies. I wish my photo showed a little bit better for that, but their legs are way back on the back of their bodies, and this is so that they can propel through the water very quickly. They're diving birds, so they eat tons and tons of fish per day, and they're constantly going deep, deep depths into the water. Now, their bone structure is also built for these deep dives underneath the water. So many bird species have somewhat hollow bone structure. The loons are one species that have a solid bone structure, and this is just because they go so deep underwater to catch fish. There's a lot of pressure of water on top of them, and if they had those fragile hollow bones, they could break easily. If you've ever been deep underwater and you feel that in your ears, there's so much pressure coming down on us. So they're built for aquatic habitats for sure. I will say one thing creepy about loons is their red eyes. Those are a little evil looking, but everything else, they're very beautiful creatures. And we are going to be moving on to mammals, menacing mammals. And I will be playing some sounds of mammals now as well, that we no longer have any birds, so we're just guessing mammals from now on. And these ones are a little bit tougher, so I'm going to see if we can actually get them.
Those are faint, kind of harder to hear sounds, but mammal is the big clue.
Mm-hmm.
So any guesses from our nature experts watching tonight, drop them into the comments right now, and we'll see how good you are with identifying that. Want to play it one more time, Stephanie, if you can?
Very faint.
Faint.
High pitch.
High pitch. I have a guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wait to see if anyone else comes in with anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say a bat.
Okay.
And so is Terrence, who's going to say bats as well.
Nice. You guys are exactly.
All right. And full disclosure, I did not see this presentation beforehand, so no, I'm guessing just along with everybody else.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you guys got that. It is a bat. That's a very difficult sound to kind of recognize because we don't often hear that, and we can barely hear it with our own ears. We actually have specialized technology that can pick up that high frequency sound, that little chirping sound. Now, the reason why these bats are doing that is they're using echolocation to locate their next snack. So just like whales using echolocation, bats send out this high frequency sound out into the sky, the night sky, and basically it jumps back at them. So it will bounce off of moths and different flying insects, and the bat can actually see, well, not see, but listen for how far that insect is, where it is in the night sky, and it can actually identify it and go in and eat it, which is really interesting. Now, bats are commonly thought to be vampires. You know, you hear all those Dracula stories of Dracula turning into a bat and drinking humans' blood, and this is a very common misconception as well. Actually, most species do not drink blood at all. All of our species of bat here in Canada only eat insects. So none of them will drink your blood. None of them are looking for you in the middle of the night to drink your blood. None of them are Draculas, but I will say in places like, I believe, Costa Rica, there are larger bats that do drink blood, but again, it's not from humans. It's more so cattle and animals that would be roaming around in the middle of the night in the woods. Bats are very interesting creatures. Now, I will say one thing about bats. They are having a very hard time right now for a lot of different reasons. There's kind of two main reasons. The first one is white nose syndrome. It's basically this disease that is passed very easily from each bat. And bats will roost out in a cave with hundreds of other bats. So if one of them has the disease, then all of them will eventually get this disease, and it kills them eventually. Another thing that they're struggling with right now is wind turbines. I love wind turbines. They're great because they're environmentally friendly, but if they are placed in the wrong place, they can impact migratory species. So bats do migrate every year. They roost out in warmer locations in caves, and they are true hibernators. So they actually hibernate. They slow down their blood pressure. They slow down their breathing, and they will sleep the winter away, basically. So they will migrate from Canada to more southern locations. And on that migratory route, if they do come in contact with wind turbines, that can ultimately be fatal for many, even hundreds of these bats. So there are a lot of things that they're dealing with right now, and that's why it is kind of important for us to kind of grow this appreciation for these animals, even though they might be creepy or scary or stuff like that. We often protect what we love, or we protect what's cute, and often we forget about those creatures that may be a little more scary. But all in all, I still think this bat is kind of cute. I don't know.
I was going to say, who says bats aren't cute?
Bigger bats are, I don't know.
At least the ones around Riverwood, very cute. Very much a joy to see. And a comment actually from Terrence, who correctly guessed bats, that he has seen bats in the evenings at Riverwood but never heard them. So now, Terrence, you have an idea of what they sound like. And one of the earlier guesses, Stephanie, when you played the bat call from Joanna, was a person pretending to be a chipmunk, which it kind of did sound like that. But I can assure you that all the nature recordings, the sound clips that we're playing, they're actually from nature. They're not just us doing our best imitations of nature.
I don't know if I can make that sound. Yeah, so the sound that they make, it's high frequency. It's something that we can't hear with our own ears many times. Sometimes you'll pick up on it a little bit, just to refer back to what Terrence said. Sometimes you can pick up on it a little bit if you're really listening, but those recordings were taken with special, it's like a recorder that can pick up high frequencies that are in the night sky. So you would need more of a technology. I don't know, there probably is some sort of app that you can actually use on your phone where you can pick that up too.
Very cool.
Okay, next sound. This one, I believe, is a little spookier, so be warned. Should I play it again?
Yes. Let's let everybody just to take a moment to hopefully not feel too scared from that. And yeah, we'll play it again. And if everyone can drop their best guesses into the comments for what this creepy sound is from.
This is a hard
one. This is tough. My first guess was actually like a person screaming, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to stick to the theme of wildlife here. I guess both mammal. So we got one guess from Robin of a possum. An interesting guess. We have from Sheena, a raccoon.
That's another really great guess.
And that would probably be my guess as well. And from Susan, a fox.
And we got a right answer.
And okay.
Nice. That is a fox, but I will say possum and raccoon, they definitely can make scary noises too. And if you've ever heard a raccoon fighting in the middle of the night, that is probably the most terrifying sound ever. Foxes will make very scary sounds as well. And a lot of people will report back, and especially if you're camping in the middle of the night, or if you're out in the woods in the middle of the night, they'll report and they'll say there's someone was screaming in the woods. And there's no stories of foxes being scary. There's no Halloween-y stories, anything like that. But more so their sound. It sounds like someone's screaming. And I wonder if a lot of those stories of people being in the woods and there being a ghost out there, or some sort of witch in the woods, I wonder if it came from a fox actually communicating with another fox. So they're quite beautiful creatures. They're great hunters, and that's actually how they communicate with each other. So if you know what this the song "What Does the Fox Say?" that is what the fox actually says.
I was waiting to make that reference. I wasn't sure if anyone else would get it, but thank you for doing that. And it's a very good point, because the song made up all kinds of crazy sounds of what the fox would say. And now we know what the fox actually says. And it kind of sounds like a person screaming.
I don't think they wanted to put that in the song. I don't think it was as famous as what it was. And we have our one last sound, and kind of a very common mammal to be used in scary stories and Halloween stories. So I'll play the sound here, and let's see if we can get more guesses. This one's a little faint as well.
So yeah, let's drop your comments or drop your guesses into the comment section. It certainly sounds like a fight. It sounds like someone was going down at Riverwood. And hopefully it was just nature taking its course. But yeah, Stephanie, I want to play that one more time, and we'll have a few more moments for people to drop in their guesses. All right, a number of guesses coming in. So first of all, from Joanna, definitely witches, 100% witches. Oh, yeah. And I guess witches would qualify as mammals, so that's a legitimate guess. From Rhea, raccoon, which would again probably be my guess, because it sounded very reminiscent to what raccoons sound like when they're fighting.
Yeah.
And then we got Robin, who is just fed up and says no clue. And a number of guesses coming in, including from Joe for coyote, Sheena as well, coyotes, from Susan, once again, coyotes, and as well from Kim, coyote. So consensus guess seems to be coyote. Stephanie, why don't you reveal what this actually was?
It's actually a witch. First guess is right. It's a bunch of witches. No, you guys are correct. It was a coyote. If you live on the outskirts of Mississauga, you're likely to hear these coyotes kind of yipping in the middle of the night, and this is how they communicate with one another. They hang out in farmlands and all of those areas around the outskirts of Mississauga mostly. But I'm sure many of you guys have seen these guys running along highways and stuff like that as well. Now, I have a soft spot in my heart for coyotes. I do feel a little bad for them. Many people dislike them because they can be dangerous at times, especially with your dogs or young children. People are very scared of coyotes coming near them. One thing I will say is the coyote is just trying to find a place to live and to hunt. So with the more urbanization of our world, we are more likely to come in contact with different kinds of wildlife, including the coyote. And the coyote is kind of a top predator here at Mississauga. And it's great that they can hang out at places like Riverwood and actually hunt natural wildlife as well. If you do see a coyote, it's very common that it will book it in the opposite direction away from you. But I will say never approach a coyote if you have your dog or whatnot. But with more urbanization, these coyotes are going to be pushed more and more into our communities. And that's just an unfortunate part of everything as well. There are a lot of stories with coyotes and wolves. You know, there's stories of werewolves and they'll be howling at the moon and they'll turn into these giant creatures. A very common story right now is, and kind of the debate among many of our biologists right now, is the term Coy Wolf. And basically this term is saying that a wolf and a coyote mated and they create this super huge coy wolf, and it's scary and it's aggressive and it's after you and your dog. And that's not really the case. And I am no expert, so I don't want to start a debate on this Facebook Live by any mean. But we have three kind of species that are related to each other here in Ontario. In southern Ontario, we have the coyote. A little farther north around Algonquin Park, we have the Algonquin wolf, which was just renamed a couple of years ago to Algonquin wolf. And then farther north is the large gray wolf. Now, the gray wolf is a larger creature. It's built for that kind of habitat, colder habitat, more forested land. Whereas our coyote that lives here in Mississauga and the Algonquin wolf, they are quite similar. And they do interbreed. So they do have genes of coyotes and wolves. So what I will say is that coyotes are mostly coyote genes with some sort of wolf percentage gene. Wolves, the Algonquin wolf, is mostly wolf genes with some sort of percentage of coyote genes. So there's always been interbreeding. And they are very similar in size. The Algonquin wolf is slightly larger, but they are not by any means as big as a gray wolf. And the way you can distinguish them really is not by size, but their nose is slightly different and their ears are slightly different as well. So there's many stories going around and many rumors going around that they're interbreeding now and there's this giant coy wolf on the loose. This is not the case at all. These animals just kind of want to hide out, do their thing, live their lives, and not want to interact with humans as much as possible. Coyotes are a little bit better for the suburban areas. So around Mississauga, they're better for farmland. So that's why you see them more in southern Ontario. Algonquin Park is one of the last refuges for Algonquin wolves. And they like to hang out in forested lands and they hunt a little bit bigger prey animals. But those are kind of the differences between that. Yeah, that's basically it about that. That's awesome that so many people guessed that. And I wonder too if people have heard them before in their backyards. I know I've heard coyotes in my backyard before, and I have pretty skittish dogs and they run inside right away. They do not want anything to do with that. Basically what they're doing when they're yipping or the howling, they're setting a territory or they're communicating with each other. So it's nothing to be scared of. It's more so saying, this is my pack and this is my territory. Please don't interfere with me.
Terrific. And we've definitely had a lot of people who've heard the coyotes as well as the foxes. So some really great, some wildlife experts, not just you today, Stephanie, but we got quite a few of the audience as well.
No expert. That is the end of my presentation. I would just like to say the point of this presentation is to kind of show a little bit of love for those creatures that are thought to be scary or gross or spooky, something we don't want to see. But like I said before, we often care for creatures that we love and we see that are majestic, like sea turtles and deer and things like that. And we sometimes forget about the creatures that are a little bit more spooky and maybe not as cute as the other animals. And I think we need to give love to all of them because that's what builds our whole ecosystem. They are all working together to survive. So thank you so much for joining me. And thank you so much for all the comments. I really, really appreciate that as well.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And Steph, you have time for a couple of questions, just because we did get a few that came in throughout the presentation that we'll get to now. And yeah, if you do have questions for us about anything that we just went over, feel free to drop it into the comments right now. So a question from earlier today from Angelo, we were talking about owls and the question of, are owls territorial?
Mm-hmm. Yes. They kind of, their hooting sounds they can mean different things. So they can be territorial sounds, or they can be communication with other species depending on the mating season. I personally do not know the difference between the two, but they are territorial and they have set kind of roosting places where they live.
And there was an earlier question, which I'm trying to find now, about the sound of the fox, and was the sound that we heard, which was quite terrifying the first time you heard it, was that the noise that the foxes make when they're fighting?
No, actually. I don't know what sound foxes make when they're fighting. I'm going to be honest with that, but that is actually just the sound they use to communicate. So if you go on YouTube and if you look up I was looking up some other fox videos, they use it to communicate in two different ways. So if they're talking to another fox, if they're trying to find where another fox is, they'll make that noise. But as well, if they are kind of setting a territory and saying, this is my territory, or if they have kind of a den nearby with babies in it, they'll make that noise as well to say, get out of here. There was a video of a dog that was outside interacting with a fox. For some reason, they were interacting, which I don't recommend because foxes sometimes can carry diseases. But when the dog came back inside, the fox just started outwardly screaming at this dog. I don't know if it wanted to come back outside or if it was telling it to stay inside. I don't know. But it's not necessarily when they're fighting. It's just a communication that they use.
Very cool. And just a couple of kind of pats on our backs today, just because I feel like highlighting it. So from Praveen, my 4.5-year-old enjoyed the show today. Thank you.
Yay.
So thanks so much for watching. And a really good spot here from Joanna, who did notice the snake earrings that Stephanie is wearing. A very nice touch.
I made these too. I Riverwood. Thank you very much, Joanne.
Really great job picking up on that. Yeah, so this is wonderful, and just some other great comments. Amazing from Dita. Amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't want to spend the rest of the night just going over all of these glowing comments, but they're coming in, and we are very appreciative of it. So thank you so much for sending that. Thank you for taking part in our presentation today. For your wildlife guesses, we got some really great wildlife and birding experts here, obviously. And Stephanie, thank you so much for your time and expertise to go over the presentation today. Hope everyone had a great time. Thanks so much for joining us today. And just a reminder that in order to keep presentations like this going, both virtually and in person at Riverwood, we do depend on the support of people like you through our charitable arm, because we are a registered charity. So if you have the financial means to make a donation, please do give today at theriverwoodconservancy.org. Much appreciated. Stephanie, thanks again for your time. Everyone, thank you for watching today. And in the meantime, stay safe. We hope to see you soon.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.